Time now for Focus, and today we have a report on a genocide that's not very well known. It was the 20th century's first genocide and was carried out in Namibia. At the turn of the last century, some 80,000 people were massacred by German troops. The victims were members of the Nama and Herero communities, and now their descendants want reparations. Caroline Dumais and Stefan Carstens sent us this report.
Standing to attention to salute their leader, Paramount Chief Rokoro, head of the Herero tribes in Namibia, is commemorating a massacre that took place in Okahanja. In January 1904, German colonial forces fired the first shot against the Herero people. 3 years later, 80% of the tribe had been killed. A century on, descendants of the community want reparations. The Paramount Chief, who is also a lawyer, has been trying for years to sue the German government in an American jurisdiction. But until now, Berlin has never dared to appear in court.
If the Germans do not come this time, we shall apply for what is called default judgment against the German government to be found guilty as charged for genocide against the Hereros and Namas, for expropriating our lands here, our livestock, all of which should have been our inheritance today. And that they must pay up. We'll not be talking of a few $100 million, not even billions. We'll talk trillions.
For more than 15 years, a foundation has been working with him to prepare for the trial. His personal advisor has done detailed research in order to prove genocide took place. He has uncovered the signed extermination order written by General Lothar von Trotter, who was in charge of the colonial troops in southwest Africa.
He used many words: exterminated, annihilated, wiped out, all these things in the text. And whoever gets Samuel dead or alive, and all those around him, each would get a reward of 500 or 5,000 Deutsche Mark. All these things are there.
Faced with photos of concentration camps and arbitrary executions, Germany cannot deny the atrocities. The massacres were documented. Berlin has publicly apologized, but in the Namibian capital Windhoek, the German ambassador refuses categorically to talk about financial compensation.
Reparation is a legal term and is paid to people who are the original victims of any state activity. And here in Namibia, we do not have any victims in the stricter sense. We have descendants of the communities, but not victims of the atrocities of 1904 to 1907.
Negotiations with the Namibian government have been ongoing in an attempt to find a diplomatic solution to the crisis. But in rural areas, nobody seems to trust the government's efforts. The tribes that were decimated during colonial times feel ignored. In the south of the country, the Nama communities have joined the Hereros from the north. In Bethany, the great-grandson of an anti-colonial leader has died. Chief Rokoro gives his condolences to the Nama communities on behalf of the Hereros. David Frederick also wanted recognition for the genocide of his people. He was a partner in the trial against Germany. His death won't alter the determination of both tribes, whose members are convinced it is the only way to get out of poverty.
It is very much eminent in the lives of the people, because the people have lost a whole amount of their ancestral land, which they used to call homelands. So basically people are landless.
Nama traditional authorities don't understand why Germany is refusing to recognize and accept the consequences of the colonial genocide.
Because we understand the main reason why Germany doesn't want to come to the court is maybe because we are black people. Why did they understand and support the Jewish claims? Why not us? Is it because we have a black skin of color?
Chief Rekoro has promised David Frederick's widow that he will come back for the funeral. But now he must continue with the trial, which was so important to both of them.
Even if they should win, the Germans, we will consider it an empty victory. It will be a Pyrrhic victory. Because to us, the legal route is simply one option of the many options we have to prosecute our war against the Germans to achieve what we want. We will simply move on to the next available option.
The dispossessed tribes dream of getting their land back. A century ago, Hereros and Namas owned 2/3 of Namibia.
Mama lokire akono bandu beamba bebe kumutala rukwao mutu boyanga parawina okwepa.
Even though there are no headstones, hundreds of people are buried here.
This is the gravesite. You will see those small heaps of sand. These are actually graves. If we were to dig just with my hand, we will come across bones.
This land became a makeshift graveyard when Namibia was a German colony.
The burial was done by the German soldiers. There was no proper burial, no respect whatsoever to the dead.
From 1904 to 1908, after a German general issued an extermination order, soldiers killed an estimated 100,000 people from two ethnic groups, the Herero and Nama. Many survivors fled, but Germany threw the rest in concentration camps, previewing techniques later used in the Holocaust.
All this area, it was the concentration camp going into the sea. 30,000 people were kept here. Many of my family members were held in concentration camps.
The killings shrunk the Herero and Nama from some of the biggest groups in Namibia to two of the smallest. Many historians consider it the first genocide of the 20th century.
This one is Slachte Street. It's a street that says to slaughter, to kill. After the war, all those areas that we occupied, they were confiscated by Germans, and most of these areas, they are owned by white settlers, if I may put it.
The Herero and Nama filed a class action lawsuit against Germany in New York last year, using an 18th century statute that allows non-Americans to sue in U.S. courts over human rights violations. Since then, they've been visiting their ancestors to pray for success. But the Herero's ancestors are buried next to German soldiers.
It has been written there in German, the so-called heroes, because they killed our grandmothers and fathers. We hope to get an apology from the Germans.
They also want reparations, money they could use to buy back land still held by Namibians of German descent. Today, white Namibians make up 6% of the population, but they own nearly 60% of the country's private land and don't want to give it up.
I'm from Namibia, born and raised. They want the land back? How? Sorry, but that's just, I mean, really? It's not even their land. If they wanted their land, then they should have done something 100 years ago. And who's to say that the land originally even belonged to them? For all we know, there were people before them there who they took the land from. So
The German government declined multiple requests for comment, but it's publicly refused to call what it did to the tribes a genocide. And in court filings, Germany argues the class action lawsuit is illegitimate because it was filed in the US. Other bygone colonial powers, like the UK and France, are watching. A Nama and Herero win could set a legal precedent, opening the floodgates for former colonies to sue over the historical record.
It's over 100 years back. It's going to be very difficult for all the other European countries who had colonies in Africa. It will be very difficult if one country starts paying now, then the rest also have to pay. Germany is giving Namibia so much money since independence, and they made it very clear that they are willing to donate much more money for the country and not for a certain tribe.
Over the last 2 years, Berlin has sent $150 million in aid to Windhoek, and Germany's ambassador has touted the fact that it gives more money per capita to Namibia than to any other country. People from the Herero diaspora gathered at a recent hearing in Manhattan.
Until Germany faces us and addresses our legitimate complaint, any kind of agreement will not obliterate our lawful claims. The struggle will simply continue.
Their lawyer helped American Jews get reparations from Germany after the Holocaust.
I really don't buy the floodgates argument. The fact pattern is so clear-cut. You have a written extermination order. There's really no defense that, well, you know, we were just putting down an uprising and maybe we were a little excessive, but it wasn't a genocide. Here you have a written policy. It's the only written policy of extermination that I'm aware of. I don't know of a stronger case than this.